So Shiv, I think you spoke about some of this, but the other interesting question I think is, COVID has sort of dominated the last 15 months in terms of news, right? So and we saw in the e-commerce case, actually, COVID sort of increased demand for e-commerce. How has COVID affected the automotive sector?
Yes, yeah, that is a great question, and actually it has been quite a major impact for the industry, right? Negative impact due to COVID. So if you looked at how it developed, right, right around the end of March, most of the activity in the country shut down with respect to manufacturing, and there was a migration of labor in April and May of 2020 away from the manufacturing clusters and the cities back to their homes and so on. So there were multiple impacts due to this. One was the disposable income of people to actually buy automobiles, like new cars, etc., and the willingness to buy, right? Even if you have the income or the money to buy, but the demand also depends on the willingness to buy, and all of that dropped very sharply in the first half of the financial year 2021. So you see the demand for the finished products dipped a lot, and that then meant that there was inventory lying in different parts of the value chain. Another thing that happened was because of the migration of the labor away from the manufacturing clusters such as Pune or Chennai and so on. Even if the companies even when they could reopen their factories, they found it very difficult to actually get this labor back, right, and then get back to the full-fledged kind of supply. And in the second half of the year, things actually started to normalize, and you started to see production sort of pick up, and you even saw a real sharp spike because there was some makeup buy, right? People who couldn't buy or go out for long, they actually went and got more cars around the festive season and so on. So you'll see a very turbulent year in 2020 for the entire industry. And then again, towards the end of the financial year, we had the second wave starting to come up, and that again was a dent on the industry. So you'll see that, and then even the suppliers such as AS Gears had to go through a similar sort of ups and downs, as you will see. So in the case study, you'll actually see 2 years, because we want to illustrate all these phenomena, right? From April 1st, 2019, you'll see the data for 24 months, all the way till March 31st, 2021. And so in these 2 years, you'll see both the BS4 to BS6 transition. In the first year, you'll see that. In the second year, you'll see all the impact that was caused due to COVID.
GV, would the students know what is financial year, or should we explain it here?
Worth explaining, I think. What is a financial year? What's the difference between calendar year and financial year?
Yeah, that's a great point. So India traditionally has had a financial year, and that's also true for our government, our tax filings and everything. That starts from April 1st of one year and goes to March 31st of the next year. So when we talk about financial year 2021, it means the period of time from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Sometimes in short, it's just called financial year 21, which is a little bit illogical, but because it's only the 3 years that come in 2021. But usually we always go by the finishing year as more important. So anyway, we will, for simplicity, we'll talk about this 2020-21. But if you look at the calendar year, that's what a lot of companies in the Western world use. It's just basically January 1st to December 31st of each year, right? So calendar year 2020 is January 1, 2020 to December 31, 2020. And financial year 20-21 is April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021.
Okay, so may also, I know you alluded to this, Shiv, but this BS4, BS6, of course, I've seen some of it as an example on buses. It says very often BS4 compliant, or trucks will say BS4 compliant. But it'd be useful, I think, to explain to our students what exactly is BS4 or BS6.
Yes, that is a fantastic question. So as you know, if you look at a few years before, right, we have some of the worst pollution in places like Delhi that has ever been recorded. And even going back 10 years, we saw that pollution in the country was increasing as it was getting more urbanized. There was more construction activity. There was other activities such as how the crops are dispositioned. There's activity around automobiles and so on. So the government decided to improve the emission norms. So emission norms are how much emission an automobile is allowed to have, right? So that's what it guides. They wanted to increase emission norms step by step and quickly catch up with the what's prevailing in some of the modern countries, advanced countries like what is in Western Europe. And they have done a remarkable job in quickly ushering in BS6. So if you look at the diesel, that is where you see the stark differences in the allowed emission norms for BS4 to BS6, right? So if you look at that table that talks about the diesel engines under the BS4 regime, they were allowed to have hydrocarbons and NOx emissions up to 300 milligrams per kilometer. And in BS6, they can only have up to 170 milligrams, so 43% reduction. If you look at NOx itself, which is nitrous oxide, which is a very poisonous gas that comes from the emissions of the cars, right? That's the stark decrease that has been mandated. So from 250 milligrams a kilometer, it was reduced only up to 80 milligrams a kilometer allowed in the BS6 cars or trucks, right? Cars basically. And then particulate matter is another one. Again, from 25 milligrams per kilometer, that was possible or allowed in the BS4 vehicles. It was starkly reduced, 82% to 4.5 milligrams only allowed per kilometer. If you see in the petrol, the changes are not that big because already petrol engines were less in NOx and PM. What's remarkable is if you see the BS6, right, the diesel engines are almost as good as petrol when it comes to NOx and particulate matters. So this is the basis of the transition from BS4 to BS6.
And this sort of helps me understand and appreciate. If I remember 10 years ago, some of these trucks and buses used to give out so much black smoke. And now, in most of the diesel cars, you can't really see that much smoke coming out, right? I think it's because a lot of that has been cleaned up. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. There is a number of mechanisms that have been incorporated in the BS6 vehicles. There is a NOx trap, which is a way in which the excess nitrous oxide is actually burnt off when the vehicle is actually going at a high speed or a good steady speed. And there's also urea treatment that happens to the emissions that reduces some of the emissions. So the technology in the BS6 diesel engines is actually quite remarkable. And you can see the drastic reduction that we see in NOx and PM. And so it has been a little bit of a rough change for the industry initially because they had to then change a number of things with the engine, the transmission, and the pollution treatment or the exhaust treatment systems in the car. But now it is bearing fruit because now I think people can actually feel less guilty about driving diesel vehicles. I myself do when I drive my diesel SUV. But yes, it did cause some disruption when the transition was going on. But in the end, we have much cleaner vehicles. Today, it's almost to the point that if you look at the overall composition of what the diesel does versus the petrol does, even in the carbon monoxide, the diesel was always more efficient because the efficiency of the diesel engine, it produced less carbon monoxide per kilometer. So if you look at per kilometer, in almost everything except hydrocarbon, diesel is actually almost as good as petrol or better in some areas.
Very, very interesting. I think we spoke about this, right, Chief?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned, and that sort of was overwhelming for me, is the number of departments in a production in a factory. So maybe Shiv, you can explain to us, how do all of these departments work together? What are the kinds of systems? What are the kind of processes? Who holds all of this together?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and this slide should help us to sort of talk through that, right? So if you look at earlier, we talked about how planning was so important in this industry, or in almost every manufacturing industry. It is really important. And the way planning works is that you want to make sure the right amount of resources are available at the right time to enable the production of the product that we are making, right? And when you talk about resources, manufacturing industry has multiple types of resources. There is material resources. That means you have to have the raw materials that are available to start the production process, or the semi-finished products that are available to start the next stage of the production process. There is human resources, which is about the people that are required to operate the machine lines and so on. There is financial resources, which means you have to have the cash to actually pay the supplier to get the product and so on, and so on. So all of these resources have to be planned so that the right amount of resources available. So if we spend too much to acquire too many resources, then your money is locked up, right? And essentially that is good. But if you have too less resources, then you cannot do a particular step in that production, and so all of the other resources will lie idle, right? Or it's a waste, right? You can't actually create the product and ship it to the customer. So the whole planning process is around making sure the right amount of resources are available at the right time. And if you want to really do that well, you have to go top down, right? So that's what this whole slide is showing. So you have to plan at a strategic level, year on year, what is this is going to do. So if, for example, if you have to create if you think that in 2 years your demand will be twice what you have today, right? The number of products your customer wants is going to be twice, then you may need to set up a new factory. So those are called long-range planning decisions. That's the strategic business plan that's at the top, right? So the CEO, the CFO, the COO of the company, or means the heads of different parts of the company, may sit together and say, let's create a strategic business plan that says, overall, what is going to be our products, where is it going to go, how we need. From there, very quickly, you have to come to what happens month by month within a year, right? So once I know that 2022 is going to be strategically, 1 million units of product that I need to make, I need to then say, what do I need to make in January, February, March, and so on? Because there could be some seasonality. As the festive season comes, a few months before that, I may need to make more so that my my customers who are then creating product for the end customer is able to make more in that time. So that is what happens in the sales and operations plan. So the sales and operation plan is the one that marries the sales plan with the production plan at a high level. So the sales guys come and say, look, I can sell 1.5 million, not 1 million next year. Then the production guys have to ramp up for that, right? So the sales and production people have to sit together and say, okay, what is realistically possible that I have to plan month by month, which is basically sales and operations plan. So usually you'll have the sales head there, you'll have the production head there, you'll have the finance head there in that planning phase. Now, we may do that for 2022 today, right? But when I get into 2022, there are going to be things that happen month by month that is going to change my outlook. Let's say the COVID completely vanishes, very positive scenario, right? And then everybody wants to buy, like people are out there wanting to buy lots of new cars next year. Now that I may not have forecast, I might have set 1.5 million parts, but when I actually come there, I find that it's even more than that or less than that. Now I have to do month by month planning as I get close to the month, right? That is the master production schedule. So that says, very close by next 2-3 months, what is going to be my production schedule? How much capacity do I need? How much materials I need, etc. That's month by month. So that's again done usually by the production head, the sales head, and so on. And then you have the material requirement plan, which is almost on a weekly basis, and sometimes it's even run on a daily basis, to say, okay, I know how much I need to make this week. I know how much labor I have, how much material I have. I know how much raw material and work in progress I have, and I know how much I need to make this week. Let me now run a routine or a program to actually, which will actually spit out exactly how much you need to make every single day of this week, right? So that's a material requirement plan, and also it will spit out how much you need to order with your supplier for some of your raw materials. Similar to that is the capacity requirement plan. So both MRP and CRP are run mostly by the production head, the human resources head, the procurement head, and so on, because they are trying to figure out how much I need to make on a shift, a day by day kind of basis, and how much capacity I have for that. So the capacity requirement plan also says I might actually need to get more contract labor, or I might need to send out some parts to a contract supplier because I don't have capacity this week. So those things happen in the capacity requirement plan. And then finally, on a shift by shift basis, a shift is actually usually 8 hours of production. So many factories, in this case, ACE runs 3 shifts. So they run a morning shift, an evening shift, and a night shift. And on that particular shift, you have to decide exactly which machines are going to be loaded, which machines are going to go under maintenance, how much product do I need to make in machine X and Y, and how much labor do I assign to that machine. So that's a detailed production schedule. And production activity control then is controlling that schedule. It's making sure that what you actually plan to make that shift, you did make. Is it efficient enough? Do you need proactive maintenance to make sure that the machine is running better next shift and so on? So that comes now to that. And then the purchasing plan, ultimately, which is managed by purchasing and finance, is aligned with the MRP, material requirement plan, and it's talking about how much do I order today, tomorrow, and so on with my suppliers. So you can see the whole thing is coming from multiple years to multiple months to multiple weeks to multiple days to multiple shifts and to one shift, and then machines within that shift kind of thing. So that's why the time phasing, it comes from top down. It comes from a wide time gap down to a narrow time gap as we go through the planning process.
So as you go down this path, you're basically paying attention to more and more details. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You're getting more detail within a smaller time bucket. You have more information on what is actually happening, and so you can be more granular in your plan.
And that, from our course perspective, basically means more and more data is being generated, more and more data is being captured, and more work for us to do in terms of analysis, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So this seems. Can you just help us understand what this is, Jim?
Yes. This is what you'll see. A lot of the data in your spreadsheets is around this picture. So you can use this picture as a backup reference. As you go through some of this data, you will keep looking at this picture many times. What this is called a bill of materials. So it is not a bill that you pay in a restaurant or whatever. It's a term that the production industry is always used to denote how the structure of the tree structure of the product is made up of. So as a company, what I'm selling to my customer is at the top, right? They are called finished products. So I'm selling 10 different gear assemblies. And this slide shows 5 of them. There is actually a full 10. It won't be fitting into a single slide. But those are called the finished products at the top, right? Those are things that we sell to the customer. Now, to make gear assembly 2, for example, I actually need
So these are the finished products, right?
Yes, those are the finished products. Gear assembly 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is also 1, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is not there in this picture. But those are the finished products. Then we talk about sub-assemblies. A sub-assembly is something that's used at the next level of the finished product. So, for example, gear assembly 2 is made of 2 gears, gear 2A and 2B. So as you saw in that picture, 2 of these gears have to be put together to make gear assembly 2. So these individual gears are called, sometimes they're called semi-finished product, sometimes they're called work in progress, sometimes they're called components, and so on. But you can imagine, right? Now, to make gear 2A, I actually start with a raw material, which is at the bottom layer of this. Those are called the raw materials. So the blank 001 is what is used to make gear 2A. Blank 002 is used to make gear 2B. And now these two gears are together making gear assembly 2. So this whole structure, which is it's a hierarchical structure, is called bill of materials. So this is very simple for me because I'm only making gear assembly, but think about the car manufacturer. Think about their bill of material, right? If you think of a finished product, which is a finished Honda City car, for example, the bill of material, if you keep breaking it down, it will have probably 50 to 60 levels, right? Or very large number of levels, because at the top level, you'll say car, and then engine and transmission and so on. And then within engine, you could have multiple sub-assemblies, and then within that, multiple products and so on. So if you go all the way across the value chain, it will have a large number of layers in the bill of material.
So even if I'm using a simple screw, it would be there in the bill of materials.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of detail.